Welcome back. Hope the coffee was good, pastries were good, because we're about to make it even better. Okay, so we spent the morning listening about AI architecture, governance. There was deployment and application also that we heard. We want to continue on now with the fireside chat with my guest, Jason Schadt. Jason is the head of growth at PublicAI. We are going to discuss more around monetization around AI for the good of the public, hence PublicAI. And it's focusing on data. So what's the underlayment of everything that we've heard today? Of course, how good and what's the integrity of the data that are feeding the models and so on. And so I want to introduce Jason, who is a highly, highly esteemed growth leader. He has worn many hats, but the common theme in terms of what he's done all throughout his career is community, building community, and making sure that everyone is enabled to participate in this progress of AI. So I am very honored to be with you right now and being on the side that asks you the hard questions.
Thank you, Maria.
Okay, great. So let's get started. Let's talk about from pilot to backbone, right? So right now, the frenzy is all about build, build, build. And everyone is getting a lot more, not only enamored, but also sold on the use of AI. Everyone, literally everyone, gets to use it now and build their own agent and so on. What have you noticed and what was the motivation of PublicAI when you walk into an enterprise, whether it's a small business or an SME or a large organization, as to did you see this frenzy, and are they in a rush to actually build something? Are they forgetful about the due diligence in terms of data and the data integrity and so on? What's the reality out there?
The hype is real, I think. And also there's a certain FOMO around it where people feel like, for their businesses, feel like they could be missing out if they don't jump in on it quickly. And the speed of the industry is changing so rapidly that new things evolve, they progress. There's new innovations that keeping up with the pace of the way things are moving. And AI is insane. Like I figure everybody here is tapped into what's happening, and you can see that the speed is incredible. So where do you start? How do you harness AI for your organization? You have to start there, I believe. You have to understand what aspects of your organization do require or might require AI or may not require it. And that's the biggest challenge to see where to start. With PublicAI, the way that we started was to collect X-rays, actually, and compile and annotate those X-rays with experts. And then we moved to building a community because we felt that having these experts were important in developing a certain business's capacity for ingesting the AI data into their training systems. So we built a network of people, contributors from around the world, currently about 3 million people from 25 over different countries, to open the doors to the public to be able to contribute their knowledge and their understanding and their experience to training the AI data. So where are we getting this data from, I think, is a big question. Is this scraped data off the internet? Is it actually synthetic data that other AIs have created, or was it created by bots? What percentage of the data on the internet is actually real and human data? What isn't? How do you differentiate that data? And that's, I think, the question that people have been asking as well is like, what's the purity of the data they're using to train their models? And where the human in the loop was part of most of the conversations today, which I think is really important. We're at PublicAI putting human in the loop from the very beginning, almost to the end. And I think that for asking the question from enterprises is, what data do you need? And I think that's a good place to start.
Okay, so that's a great answer. In terms of talent in the workplace, so we've all heard about the future of work, or that AI is taking up everyone's job. The evolution of the worker, right? They're certainly becoming more and more entrepreneurial. Number one, do you think smaller organizations who can pivot faster, theoretically, have an advantage over larger ones who are more mired in bureaucracy in terms of revolutionizing their talent pool so that they become more like the entrepreneurial public AI participants?
Yeah, I think we've seen in history the way that technology has changed how companies operate, and those who pivot and those who don't, and what happens to them. And I think that that's in response to your first question as well, is like, okay, how do we get in? How do we deploy this? How do we move? We can't miss the bus when it comes to AI because it's changing a lot.
Right.
And that's also with the workforce and how people's jobs will evolve as AI becomes more prominent in our lives and in the organizations that we work for and that we're building. And, I think understanding that direction as a smaller organization, as an SME, you're able to pivot faster, but it's also, I think, thinking about the future of where your organization sits and how it will look in the age of AI. Like, are you going to be competing against a business similar to yours that has 2 employees and they're running everything autonomously? Or is your business even going to exist in 10 to 15 years? Will it be relevant anymore? And I think those are the questions that we need to ask. Like, what's been on my mind most recently is this idea of the zero human company. And how the companies of the future will start to will have the advantage when it comes to AI in terms of how they start and how they launch and how they integrate and use the systems. So the challenges with existing companies, how do you make that pivot?
Yep.
And how you do it? Like, there was great presentations earlier, and one that struck me was Naman's talk about governance. And I think a lot of people overlook governance, especially smaller businesses overlook governance and the importance of governance in setting that on a foundational level for their businesses. And so that's a good place to start if you're...
Okay, great. So the second part of the question is a generational one, right? So not only the contrast between large and smaller orgs and who gets to pivot a lot easier, but when you're hiring talent or retaining talent, depending on the seniority level, who were used to titles before, and so on, who gets to do more of the governance consulting versus the actual in the loop and on the loop type jobs?
It's a good question. Well, we have experts, I think, for a reason.
Yeah.
And the experts, I think, will be around a lot longer than people within a company whose jobs can be automated and replaced. And I think that if we're thinking about our roles as a worker or an employee or someone who wants to start a business, what makes us valuable to the business is our particular expertise that is important enough that we can use to grow and to train the AI. Like even now, you're seeing some companies that are hiring their staff of experts for 1 year,
Yeah.
and simply just training their AI systems and then
And
letting
then
them
on to
go,
the next.
right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
what happens also to those people,
Right.
right? Where do they
Right.
go? What do they do next?
Okay.
And then what happens in a world where 50, 60% of our population's jobs are either gone or transformed, and they're not ready for it. So as companies, as enterprises and organizations in this room, I think you're thinking about not only about your survival and with what's coming, but also about your people, right? Your workforce, your culture. What's your plan down the road in terms of adopting the technology, implementing it, managing your workforce, and for what purposes are you? What are you trying to achieve out of this as you
Right.
pivot into this age of
Right.
AI?
I actually think there's the confluence of both worlds. One is for those of us who have seen both and straddled both, and then those of us or the younger ones, right, who may be more and more actually used to the idea of public AI, and so I I predict that public AI would have more and more competitors in the near future, maybe in the next couple of years, because the focus will be on data and expertise on that data. But when you look at Gen Z, for example, and then Gen Alpha pretty soon, this may be the ideal workplace for them because I can't imagine them trying to penetrate a large organization who themselves are not sure as to how they're going to move through this AI transformation. I can't imagine them trying to insist on going there as opposed to something like public AI where they can be, the master of their domain, so to speak, get better at that, move on to from one project to the next, but having the satisfaction that they've helped someone and have bettered someone's AI. Do you think public AI's business model will be more and more popular? Will you have more competitors?
Yeah, I think it already is. There are a number of competitors that are, tapping into the human potential and knowledge of the individual, especially for expertise. The gig economy is something interesting to look at as well because we see it already with, Uber and the different companies like Grab, for example. The people are working these gigs and they have side hustles, and in a way, what public AI is offering is this version of the gig economy where rather than speaking about ethical AI, rather than companies sourcing their AI from scraping the internet, you're actually getting it from humans who are being compensated for their time, and I think that that's an important thing. And depending on your level of expertise as well, or for what type of data needs training, is this voice data? Are you a particular speaker of a language that is very rare and is in need? Your rate could be higher than someone who's speaking English, for example. So this type of gig economy exists to help people who are not necessarily interested in the traditional idea of I'm going to graduate and I get a job with the company and then I'm going to be there for X amount of years. I think that idea has kind of gone out the window already.
Yes.
And we're creating sort of a new wave of AI powered entrepreneurs that we're already seeing sort of emerge through this the phenomenon that they call the open claw, for example. Like it's really interesting to see people launching their AI agents and making money and experimenting. And obviously, as an enterprise, you can't just go straight in and do that. You need to be careful with your privacy and sandbox and do all of your due diligence with your data first. But yeah, definitely we're seeing a new gig economy emerge.
Okay. There's a concern I hear from SMEs specifically that governance frameworks are built for larger organizations. So the tooling, the compliance infrastructure, dedicated AI ethics, and so on, it's for larger organizations. So they, at least at SMEMojo, that's their number one, I wouldn't say complaint, but concerned that more and more they're getting left behind or, kind of not left behind, but ignored because everything is designed for the larger orgs. So how can something like public AI, which is really an ecosystem that keeps on giving, right, in terms of the AI enablement of anyone of any size, how do you make the case so that the SME can, number one, find out about you and give you guys a try when it comes to at least the data intelligence in terms of what they're using in their AI pivots?
Yeah, I think it's more than just the governance angle. It's also your data, the purity of your data,
Right.
and where the data is coming from.
Which an
Where-
SME will not likely have, right?
Yeah.
The bulk of it.
And I think that's the advantage of say, using public AI or something similar where you're sourcing the data from actual humans. You know where it comes from. You know that those humans are being rewarded, are being fairly compensated, and then there's that ethical element to the data you're collecting, which for governance and regulation could be beneficial for you rather than say taking the shortcut and then risking what might happen, not only with hallucinations but with bad data sets, and that could complicate things down the road. But not only that, you can really target, like imagine it's like a focus group for market research for a product, right? You could really target exactly what type of data that you want, and you can get the humans to provide that data, for very niche purposes as well. So depending on what your business needs are, you have that opportunity to source niche data from humans. That's actually quite a lot more valuable than sort of the generic data that's available
Yeah.
currently.
Okay. So when you are biz deving, let's say, how do you compare and contrast synthetic data? Because there's a Nature article that says, of course, synthetic data eventually collapses, right? How do you contrast that over what public AI has invented in terms of the business model?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends also what you're trying to achieve with AI in your business.
Let me interject. So, do you find that enterprise leaders, the people that you're talking to, who may as well be leading, their data, the data organization within their business, right? Do you find that they are actually more receptive to the human in the loop type data versus synthetic data? Did they ever accept synthetic data?
They would rather not.
Yeah.
Yeah, because not just for the ethical reasons, but they know what they know exactly what they're getting and what they want, the type of data that they want to get, and that's more beneficial than trying to figure it out through navigating whether a data is synthetic or not. Like, how do you really determine that? It's harder to determine that than to get source data from humans from the get-go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, thinking about customer experience off of the AI assistants that are feeding off of the data, human curated data, and so on, given their expertise, what do you think? What do you think most organizations are still undervaluing and sort of a little bit scared of right now, given this trend?
I would imagine the agentic element of having different agents managing different aspects of their business, and then understanding how to control them and to provide them with the right resources. That undervaluing agentic, I think, is more of like not understanding the power and the challenges around it. We spoke about the governance, right? And I think the governance was addressing a lot of these challenges at the core level, and how you could, like, agents are very powerful, but at the same time, if something goes wrong, that can impact your customer experience, and then one bad experience goes to someone not wanting to use your product. But at the same time, it's undervalued because you could do it right, or you could set the framework for doing it right first and experiment with that before actually implementing it. Use it internally with your team first, and that would be the area I think that is underrepresented.
Got it. It's probably easier to overcome, though, than the previous trend of, oh, AI, I don't want to do it. So this is an easier challenge to surmount, right?
Yeah, and also I think the skepticism around AI in general.
Yeah.
Like, and then that's sort of the public. So understanding your customers as well, and who's going to be interacting with the AI. How they feel about it. Sometimes, as I'm a Canadian, so Canada was like one of the first countries to implement a lot of the automated telephone services, that when you call somewhere, it's like you got to press 8 to get to here or 9 to get to there, and a lot of people are like, let me just talk to a human. It'd be so much easier
Exactly.
to talk to a human. So, understanding your customer as well, and their reactions.
Okay. Last couple of questions. So you've seen clients from all over the world, right, in terms of their mindset with the data and so on. Now, Singapore has, of course, wanted to be first and cutting edge when it comes to really governing AI and AI use and data usage and so on. What praises can you give to someone like Singapore versus what you've seen in other countries who were taking a stance, being more, I wouldn't say being more regulated, but certainly getting their act faster than, let's say, the Philippines and so on. How is Singapore a model to other countries, maybe even in ASEAN?
Yeah, it's important to have sort of a leader in this space because, again, the technology is moving so fast that regulation and compliance is always going to be one step behind. And to have a leader in that space like Singapore, who can say, hey, this is how we're implementing. We have these practices and procedures in place that other countries could potentially follow or learn from. And eventually, as things become even more integrated globally, that we're not just looking at sort of a per country by country, everybody around the world will be affected. Essentially, that we need to have people leading the charge when it comes to regulation and compliance, and being able to set the frameworks that other countries can use as well. So,
do you think it's more fair to SMEs? Does it give them more attention than other countries, or no?
Well, I know Singapore is very progressive when it comes to supporting local businesses and entrepreneurs, and upskilling the workforce. And especially, I was just talking to a friend of mine last night. He was saying that the government wants to offer free AI to Singaporeans so that they can start to use and learn it, like offer free credits. which I thought was pretty interesting because you don't really see that with other countries. And so, yeah, definitely, leading the way not only for on the government side, but as well as for the smaller businesses. So it's still, SMEs are still kind of left to figure it out themselves in a way, but knowing that there's a certain level of support, I think, from the government, is if you have a collective body of SMCs come together and say, hey, this is what we need. You could present that case to the government and potentially get more support that way.
Reason I asked that, it's a bit of a loaded question actually. So at SMEMojo, of course, our focus is on SMEs. And we do know that we are founded in Singapore. We do know that there's a lot of funding and grants and investments pouring into ASEAN specifically for SMEs to get them more AI acclimated and so on. So I do think something like that is quite timely for someone like PublicAI. Again, or as a last note, how do you warn or what do you say to the larger organizations who are not as nimble, essentially? And now that there's more and more attention going to SMEs, how do you kind of give a jolt to the larger org so that they can transform and evolve faster? What would you say to the boardroom?
Yeah. Like whether or not the business itself has longevity in an age of AI, where you could see a lot of, like, in terms of banking as well, we noticed banking has changed quite a bit. And a lot of online banks, like having a physical location where there's tellers and people going in, this started to phase out with ATMs, and then now you have online banking. So how are you going to shift your business model into an age of AI, and does it fit? And if not, how do you need to pivot? The relevancy of the dinosaur analogy, I think is important here, because some businesses might just plainly not exist in the future. And if you are a huge organization that sort of has been dependent on the legacy of your industry, that could become extinct with this AI meteor coming faster than we know. What's your plan around that? What kind of contingencies do you have in place in terms of, well, can you pivot to where? Do you need to just completely change? Are you going to have to lay people off? Are you going to implement sort of AI and agents to help manage your business? Like, these are the questions I think you have to start asking.
Yeah, great. Jason, thank you so much. I think PublicAI is definitely on a great track for the future, not just for itself, but also for the benefits of a lot of companies, small or large. And so keep on at it. I suspect a lot of people in the room would want to talk to you about the business model and how they can be helped in terms of the data and so on. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.